Hey everybody, I'm David Scott from Court TV's Interview with a Killer. The behavior panel guys are letting me hijack their show, so I want to welcome you as our four favorite profilers take a look at my latest killer interview, the case of double murderer Adam Curtis Williams. He claims he's a whole new man and sees the error of his ways. Well, let's let the behavior panel guys be the judge of that. And please tune in to the next episode of Interview with a Killer, Saturday at 8 p.m. on Court TV. You can also watch on Court TV's YouTube channel or on Court TV's website. All right, over to you guys. Thanks very much for doing this, guys. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to hear what you see.
David, thanks so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it, man.
Hey, thank you guys, man. I'm really excited to be on the behavior panel.
Where are you going?
I'm heading downtown Manhattan from the Bronx. I'm about to get on the Metro North Railroad and head to Grand Central.
Ah,
So before you get on that underground, that tube train, tell us how this whole interview came about. How did you make it?
Well, this is the premiere episode of our third season. Several months ago, we got an opportunity to interview a double homicide convict named Adam Curtis Williams. I have to say he's the most intimidating figure I've faced so far. Big, powerful man, former Aryan Brotherhood, former biker gang, just a lifelong, vicious, violent criminal. But he's also the killer who I felt led us the furthest inside his twisted mind. And I'm so curious to see what you guys make of him.
excellent.
It's a good one. Thank you for letting us use it and coming to talk to us.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Listen, David, I wonder whether you'll be surprised as to what we have to say. I wonder. I'll be waiting for your feedback on it.
I'm sure you will. I mean, you guys saw things in Denali Bremer that, frankly, I couldn't have fathomed. And Scott and Greg have taken a look at some of the other interviews we have in store for this season, and also saw things that we would have none of us on the production team would have ever cued into. And so whenever we can get you guys to look at our stuff, it's totally additive, totally fascinating, and eye-opening even for us.
awesome.
Well, we love your interview style. We love you get to facts and you let them talk. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, listen, thanks so much for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. And now
my pleasure.
We'll take a look at the show.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, for meeting me here today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for this opportunity.
We're here, Mr. Williams, to try and understand the mindset and motivations behind your actions in this case.
Okay.
Why did you want to talk to us today?
Well, there was a number of reasons, actually. The first thing I guess I want to say is, I've been approached by multiple different documentaries. I've never made a statement. I've never said anything whatsoever about the crimes, period.
This is the first time you're talking.
This is the very first time.
Including in court.
100%. I've never made a statement at all. I was too sick. I've been consumed by demons most of my life. I've let them run my body. I just recently found Christ, and through him, I have been able to control the demons and the just wild thoughts and just uncontrollable emotions that I've been plagued with. I never believed in God before. And then I had an experience here in this prison that just totally changed my life.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I could go on and on and on about this one because this is a guy demonstrating his value. There is clearly in this first part, he needs to make sure David understands the value of what he's giving. And he projects it. You can't miss it by watching a couple of things. Let me first talk about David. I watched him interview enough times and talk to him. He doesn't pound his hand on the table very often. That probably indicates nervousness when he thanks Williams and bangs the table. Really odd for him. He probably didn't even notice he did it. There's real low eye contact as the guy's talking about, thank you for the opportunity. And then everybody's going to tell you that their eye movement means this or this or this. And there are times eye movement means something. In this case, his eyes are moving around. There's also something about his eyes in this video that I find really intriguing. That if you know about DUI and the stigma, when a person's eyes move off to the right or left and they're out of range and they get in the stigma, their eyes will bounce. This guy's eyes bounce when he's talking. They bounce left, right, left, right, left, right. Something's up in there. Some neurologist can tell me exactly what and put it down in the notes below. It could be a residuals from some kind of drugs, but paying attention to his eyes is going to be really interesting because there is one place that we can see he does eye movement that matters. And that's when they're asking, when he starts to tell him how important this is, that he's only talking to him. Watch him look down to his left as he has an internal voice and he's thinking about what to say. Then he goes to a hell of a lot of prolonged eye contact that is just way too much for a normal person. And that's because he wants to know what this guy is saying or what this guy's thinking of him. I think as he's looking and he's trying to humanize himself, there's some pieces he is going to have a long way to go because he doesn't have normal behaviors. And if you know what you're looking at, you can see his request for approval. His brow is up and that squinting as he's trying to get you to know what he's saying and he's trying to persuade. We're going to see a different body language in persuasion and one in telling. So this will be an interesting one to start with. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, nice call on that hand movement from David. There's some adapters that he does as well, which are out of baseline for him. So it doesn't surprise me that he told us, just before we're doing this, that he found this person particularly intimidating. His behavior is not some of the usual behavior in other interviews. So interesting to see that. This is not the only time that we've looked at somebody who is talking about some kind of demonic possession, maybe finding God or Jesus in some way. And this isn't the only person to go down that route. So there's something of a meme or a mem, whichever you want to do, around this. He's going for a cultural icon here of demonic possession and finding religion in some way. So he says, thank you to David. Thank you for this opportunity. We get an eye break from him. His eyes, his eyelids go down. There's a lip retraction. There's also a lip lick on that. I wonder where he thinks the power is. I wonder whether the subject here feels that he's more powerful than David, that actually the opportunity is for David, not for the subject here. I wonder whether he's signaling a reversal of that and there's some kind of agitation around that. He says, I've been consumed by demons most of my life, and there's strong eye contact on that. Okay, well, is that because he's being honest about that, or he's trying to sell us the story? We'll find out a little bit later on, I think. I let them run my body. There's an eye block on that, and a sustained, which is a sustained blink, a full closing of the eyes. I wonder whether the demons were running his body or somebody else was running that body.
Or something else.
Something else. Demonic thoughts he talks about, wild thoughts, and there seems to be a sense of confusion around that. But some good baton gestures. He used the words plagued as well. So he's definitely into his demonology. He knows that they come as a plague. He knows that you get consumed by them. So he's wellish read on his demonology. The story is pretty good. However, there already seems to be some deception for me around that. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I definitely agree. First thing right away, we're looking at a killer. I always want to look for the presence of these forehead lines. And if you look at Mark's forehead, he uses his forehead, like most people do, as a social billboard. This is how we communicate. You can't see them right now, but Greg's got them too, and they're just like all of ours. I was hoping you would raise your eyebrows, Greg. Well,
there you go.
There. So you have proof now. So he didn't have these forehead lines. And one thing, I've got no science to back this up. But I've seen throughout my life, I've seen these people who have almost zero empathy don't have these lines because they're not using their forehead enough to really mark it out. My observation, I think maybe you guys have seen something similar or maybe seen the same thing. But you'll see like right away he's communicating status and importance. He's setting the stage early with his worldview. He's showing us how he views the world, what's important to him, the status. This is very important. And he's approached by all of these people in documentary crews that are seen as important, lots of them. And he's talking about this consumed by demons concept. A lot of times this is outsourcing responsibility. And the narrative, when we hear this many times, and some people believe it, it doesn't change the narrative, is a lack of fault and guilt. It wasn't me who did all those bad things. And this is common in cases where there is a reputation protection mechanism at play. But we see some downright, Greg talked a lot about the nystagmus, longtime heroin users, after like 3 or 4 years, develop a VOR reflex disruption. This is our vestibulo-ocular reflex accuracy reduction. And that causes like the far out nystagmus that kind of when they come out to the side. And just my opinion on that. But there's some emotional accessing when we look down and right. And there's a lot of weird eye movement stuff out there. Greg has sold me into the cult of believing those two eye movements are absolutely true. That downright is emotional. And he does this downright movement down here when he's talking about his experiences with God and finding Christ. So right here when he talks about finding God, you'll notice that little downright. That's one of the very few reliable access points. But before you shut anything down, I think he's genuinely feeling emotional about that. Let's admit something about all of us here. Our brains are not truth-seeking machines. They are defense attorneys. Our brains are trying to prove us right and protect our tribe story all the time. So every one of us watching this, including me when I started, walked in already knowing what we wanted to see. And the first time I watched this clip, I thought, no way, he's absolutely performing. I rewatched it, and that was my own projection. I was projecting onto this video here. So I had some moral bias, I'll call it, and I had a little confirmation bias there. So if you catch yourself disagreeing with me right now, maybe that's good. That's the system that I'm talking about in action there. So the real work isn't in doing any judging. It's catching that stuff before we start to do it. Scott, what do you got?
All right, I'm going to go down the road of the nature versus nurture psychopath and what I think we're dealing with here. Because I'm under the impression this guy's a psychopath, but deciding which version he is. Is he the one that was that grew up without having his emotions addressed? You know, somebody was always repressing him. In other words, he didn't. Nobody ever said, "Oh, don't kick that little dog because that hurts him. You don't know how that feels." You know, or think about how that may feel that little puppy. Or don't be mean to this person. You don't know how they feel. So those emotions, in other words, are repressed. And then you have the nature psychopath, which is the one born without specific parts of the brain that don't work properly. One of the main ones is let me turn my phone off. Sorry about that. One of the main ones is the amygdala. And then we have the prefrontal cortex. Those are pretty much the main parts of the brain that don't function or connect properly to each other. So that's the difference in the nature and the nurture style. So trying to decide which one he is, it's not too tough once you get into this after a couple minutes, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, the narcissism level on this guy it's pretty high, but it's not quite as high as it is on the nature side of the psychopath, on the clinical psychopath, which we'll see as we go through this. And right out of the gate, he's fairly relaxed. And for me, I didn't see a whole lot of stress outside of that little mouth goofing around thing he was doing. So there were some little cues, but of course he's on, he's being filmed and he's being interviewed. So there's some stress there, but nothing for me, nothing huge right out of the gate. His brow engagement's very low, like you guys were all talking about. And the brow is like the billboard for emotion. Greg, I can't remember who you said was the person who said that. Who's the person that said that?
I think I started that from Desmond Morris, like Naked Ape 1,000 years ago. I think he's the first guy to say it. Because
I remember you said something about that last week, and I could not remember who you said.
Pretty sure it's Desmond Morris. Maybe it's some, I think that book was written the year I was born. So.
Okay. All right. So we only see his brow engaged 2 times, and both times when he's given information about himself and his experience in prison. So that's fairly important there. And it doesn't mean he's experiencing big emotions about those, but those are the times where his brow actually engages. And that lets us know that the emotions he is feeling, those are tightly controlled, in other words. So we do see his eyebrows engage a little bit, but I think what he's trying to do is show concern, and he doesn't know what these different emotions are supposed to look like on your face as far as expressions go. So we see him doing these things that he thinks makes him look like he's being emotional, which is very common in psychopaths because they don't know what it looks like. So it could, what may look like anger to us, he may think it is concern with him or being interested in something, you know. So he doesn't understand the differences in those expressions, so that's why it looks and seems odd. And he also talks about controlling his emotions when he's he's learned to control these thoughts and these feelings he has. Psychopaths, the nature psychopath doesn't talk that way because they don't understand what the emotions of empathy and sympathy are. Whereas the nurtured one, they may feel a little bit of those as they go through life. So they have at least a small understanding of what those are and what emotions are and what feeling them are. So he's talking about and he knows his have been out of control. So he's trying to keep those under control and talks about that. Whereas the clinical psychopath, like I said before, won't be doing that. So I thought that was fairly interesting. So at this point, I'm pretty much under the impression he's the nurtured psychopath instead of the nature psychopath.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, for meeting me here today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for this opportunity.
We're here, Mr. Williams, to try and understand the mindset and motivations behind your actions in this case.
Okay.
Right? Why did you want to talk to us today?
Well, there was a number of reasons, actually. The first thing I guess I want to say is, I've been approached by multiple different documentaries. I've never made a statement. I've never said anything whatsoever about the crimes, period.
This is the first time you're talking.
This is the very first time.
Including in court.
100%. I've never made a statement at all. I was too sick. I've been consumed by demons most of my life. I've let them run my body. I just recently found Christ, and through him, I have been able to control the demons and the just wild thoughts and just uncontrollable emotions that I've been plagued with. I never believed in God before. And then I had an experience here in this prison that just totally changed my life.
In prison, you're always looking for a way to hustle and take advantage of the system?
I used to be, yes.
Mm-hmm. You maintained a heroin habit in federal prison.
I sure did.
For how long?
The entire time I was in there.
Is it that easy?
No, but I used to have this saying where there's a will, there's a way. If you're willing to put in the work in anything in life, you'll eventually get what you want, whether it be a college degree or getting heroin in or whatever it is.
You also started some gory, bloody fights.
Yeah, started and defended myself in many fights. Yes, I started an unbelievable amount.
Dozens more?
Oh, yes.
Including one that you detail in your writing, which is just a horrifying story about an attack that you provoked on your cellmate who accidentally broke your radio.
Well, I 100% started that and ended up finishing it. So that's where this came from.
Scarface, right. You say, I proceeded to beat the living out of this dude. When I finished with him, his lips looked like some animal had chewed on them. They were so split open that his face looked like the Elephant Man, and my hands were like blown up like rubber gloves.
Yep. That's what happened.
I mean, that is a level of violence that very few people can relate to.
Right.
You said you became an animal in that setting.
That particular situation, something happened to me. And I was never the same again after that.
You said, all I wanted to do was work out, get high, and hurt people.
That's 100% correct.
I couldn't wait for people to give me a reason to them up.
Yep.
To this day, I was and forever am a convict.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you a lot of intensely personal questions. How do you explain it? The worst crime anyone can imagine. Do you feel like you took the fall for this murder? Tell me in your own words, what happened? Let's get started.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturdays at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
All right. Chase, what do you got?
So his voice, his affect, and even the tone of his voice sound like Vincent Vega, who worked for Marcellus Wallace in Pulp Fiction, played by John Travolta. And we were off camera trying to figure out who he sounded like. And I think it's Vincent Vega. That character specifically, the Vincent Vega voice, is who I hear there. But when he's asked about this fight with his cellmate, there's a behavior I usually don't mention because it's not the easiest to spot, but it's very good here. And this is narration hesitancy. And we see this every once in a while. He narrates, in my estimation, that his radio was actually thrown across the room. It wasn't accidentally damaged. This is a big deal because he never says it. And I think his cellmate threw his radio like that across the room. And I think it's interesting because he takes ownership instead of talking about an action that would make us feel like the cellmate deserved the beatdown. I think this is a big deal that's going to expose a lot of behavioral psychology that we're going to be talking about next. Then when he's talking about starting the fight, there's more emotional recall. There's actual emotional recall about feeling like he started this fight. Same eye movement that we see when he's talking about finding God. I'm going to go short on this one. Greg, I yield my time to you.
Yeah, so here's what's interesting. The reason I think you're seeing that containment, I'll go back to video one. I believe he's found God. I think look, it doesn't have to be the God you worship, doesn't have to be the God you believe in, but I think he has found a religion, and it is a containment tool for him. We're going to see a lot of places where this guy contains, and this is a first of them. It's very clear. I think in the very first video, I went out of my way to make sure you could see it was important for him, for David to appreciate what he was getting from him. Because I think this guy's got an inflated ego. He killed two people, but he's got a whole lot more going on. You're going to find out as we go through this. And he uses two different body languages in this clip that we're watching. The first one is persuading. When he's persuading, if you look, he's used to be. There's no remorse. There's no show of sadness. And he's taking this as a chance to reinforce his message. He's just persuading. You don't see him using his hands a whole lot. But what you do see is when he starts to then talk about something where he's questioned about his views on things. I had this view that anything can be done with, I don't know what words he used exactly, but where there's a will, there's a way is what he said. He's illustrating. He's using his hands in a big way in talking because he's proud of that. And he's thinking of those things that he did. He's not ashamed of them. When he shows that containment, Chase, is when you see it. When he starts to say through the radio across, he almost said, I didn't start the fight, but I finished it, or I started the fight, but I finished it. He almost said that. And that containment, that little voice in the back of his head, little angel on this shoulder, devil on that one, saying, don't say that. Whether it's because of perception by the guy or whether it's something else in him. And I think there's something else in him, something he's trying to use to contain. Look, all those drives can still be there and a person be a good Christian. There are plenty of good Christians who are doing horrible things every day that you don't know about, but are hiding it right in plain sight. So I think this could be a containment and a braking mechanism for him. And I agree with you. I think that was genuine. This new self can follow all those rules. The church can insulate. So if you find a bunch of ex-cons who are out there who are Christians, they insulate each other. They look out for each other. It's kind of like drugs, kind of like any of that other thing that people look out for each other and try to keep people from sliding back into it. I have said this more than one time on here, but I met a guy named Barry Menkow who defrauded a whole bunch of Americans when he was 18 and did the youngest ever guy to take a business to IPO on Wall Street. And I met him when we were talking to a bunch of factors. And over lunch, I talked to him, came back, and the guy said, what did you think? I said, he'll be back in prison in 6 months. And sure enough, he was. Because in his nature was this thing. And he would say, I try harder every day to be a better person. That doesn't mean that they're not going to do something again. It doesn't mean there's not some monster living inside, but what it does mean is that. So let me give you why I know he is testing the waters. When the guy starts to ask him about gory fights, when David asks about gory fights, his cadence slows almost to the point of halting. It doesn't continue. And he goes into internal voice. When we say internal voice, if you sit now and try to calculate 15% of 980 without doing arithmetic, your eyes are going to drift down into your left because you're having internal voice. And then he avoids saying started and finished, instead moving to I defended myself. Then he starts to counter about the cellmate breaking the radio. He moves to visual accessing, meaning his eyes are looking up above his brow ridge. And we don't know whether he's going to memory or making something up, but we know he's going into that part of his brain. And then he eye blocks. Mark, you covered it really well. Eye blocking is extended, closed eyes to get away. And then he rationalized why he did it. All that, then he starts to come back up. So we're seeing a passion for what he believes and what matters to him versus when he's trying to persuade you. And this is control of actions. I think we'll see it more and more and more. And we're going to look for leakage because people who are containing show leakage. Once had a kid I took pictures of for a book, and I angered him, and you could see this motion rifle across his face because when you're a little kid, you have very little control. But as you age, Desmond Morris said we can control our faces better than we control our hands. So good indicator out the gate, trying to persuade, being honest, now trying to hold and control that line is what I see. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Like, I'm trying not to cover what you guys have covered so far, but at the beginning, he is a little bit looser because his head's moving around a lot. The shaking and the nodding, those things are a little bit looser. Then when David asks him about the fight about the broken radio, that's where these things, again, like you guys said, that anger pops up. He starts stuttering a little bit. His breath rate increases. He takes that deep breath and lets that out. And then after he says, after finishing it, there's this chin jut there and a grunt. So that's anger. There's no two ways about that, about what that is. And then as he's reliving these situations, like you guys were saying a few minutes ago, that's when he's feeling this stuff. That's when it's come back up. It's triggering these. As David talks about it and asking about this stuff and these subjects come up, it's triggering those emotions, the little that he has in there. And so his cadence starts speeding up. His voice gets a little bit constricted. So the tone of his voice rises a little bit, and so does the volume. So these are all indications of building and suppressing his anger. So now almost the same thing happens after he's talking about his hands being blown up like rubber gloves after apparently he was beating that guy, trying to beat him to death. And when David says that level of, we see a micro expression of anger that happens on his right side. And so this is fascinating because we always talk about micro expressions, and people do. But the true micro expression is the leakage of an emotion. While you're trying to suppress that and keep that in, you don't want anybody to see it. And they're very, very tiny. And we see a classic. Even Ekman has talked about this one and shown this one. So this shows up on here. It's just above his lip, just comes up just a little bit. We can see by that little muscle there pulling up just below the orbicularis oculi, which is this muscle here, but that plays a part in it as well.
That's what happened.
I mean, that is a level of
But it's really tiny. It's fascinating how small it is and how fast it happens. It's like 1/10 of a second. So on the way back through, be sure you watch for that at that point. So David's getting him all worked up, and he's trying to keep his anger tamped down. So this goes back to the nurtured psychopath, not the nature style psychopath. This guy has an idea of what feelings are, and I think he has a few feelings in there and emotions, but they're not on any level like ours or pretty much everybody watching. He's got a little bit of that in there, but not full on. So I think, again, this goes on the nurture side of psychopaths. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, interesting. I agree with you, Chase. He does do some narration there around what he thought happened with the radio. He also stops himself telling the story. He says, well, he wants to justify the violence, essentially. But he stops himself and he says, I 100% started that. 100% started that. Listen, I want to get down to whether he is psychologically able to moderate his emotions now, his anger, because it looks like he does there. He wants to go down the route of anger, and he stops himself and says, no, my responsibility. There's no justification. He doesn't say there's no justification, but he stops his justification. We would say he's moderating his emotions there. Or is it a demon? which you could have exorcised. There's a whole, in the Catholic Church, there is a ritual you can do. If you have a demon, you can have that thrown out. So is he truly believing that he has some kind of demonic possession? Because he was more than hinting at that at the start. And here we see him moderating his emotions here, not with any kind of religious ritual, but with moderation, with suppressing those. So which one is it?
Therapy people do it too.
Yeah.
Therapy people do it too.
Yeah, exactly. So has he been seeing a therapist, or has he been seeing a priest or a pastor to deal with this? Or maybe both. Listen, some people don't believe in priests and pastors. Some people don't believe in therapists. And so I'm not on either side here. I'm just interested in, what does he truly believe? He says, that particular situation, something happened in me and I was never the same after that. Well, that's introspection verbally, because we're going to look at what he says, as well as how he behaves, as well as the culture that he's in. That's a piece of introspection. His eyes go down as he introspects around that, but then they dart off to one side. I'm not as adept as Greg is about making decisions around what that might mean, but I would say it's a direct movement from that baseline of introspection. I wonder whether he's going to a script about I was never the same after that. He's saying there was a moment where everything changed for him. But then we're going to hear later on that some other moment made him change as well. So which one is it? Is it this one or the one that we're going to hear later on? You can only have one road to Damascus, or maybe you can have many roads to Damascus. I mean, maybe you can. I would say if you want a really good story and a really good narrative, you're better picking your road. And at the moment, it looks like he's picked a road, but we're going to see that road change later on. I'm already slightly confused.
In prison, you're always looking for a way to hustle and take advantage of the system?
I used to be, yes.
Mm-hmm. You maintained a heroin habit.
Oh,
in
yeah.
federal prison.
I sure did.
For how long?
The entire time I was in there.
Is it that easy?
No, but I used to have this saying where there's a will, there's a way. If you're willing to put in the work in anything in life, you'll eventually get what you want, whether it be a college degree or getting heroin in or whatever it is.
You also started some gory, bloody fights.
Yeah. Started and defended myself in many fights. Yes, I started an unbelievable amount.
Dozens more?
Oh, yes.
Including one that you detail in your writing, which is just a horrifying story about an attack that you provoked on your cellmate who accidentally broke your radio.
Well, I 100%. Started that and ended up finishing it. So that's where this came from.
Scarface. Right. You say, I proceeded to beat the living out of this dude. When I finished with him, his lips looked like some animal had chewed on them. They were so split open that his face looked like the Elephant Man, and my hands were like blown up like rubber gloves.
Yep. That's what happened.
I mean, that is a level of violence that very few people can relate to.
Right.
You said you became an animal in that setting.
That particular situation, something happened to me. And I was never the same again after that.
You said, all I wanted to do was work out, get high, and hurt people.
That's 100% correct.
I couldn't wait for people to give me a reason to them up.
Yep.
To this day, I was and forever am a convict.
Yep.
Was she praying, or was that
No, it's just that when I shot her like in the hip-ish area, it flew her. She flew, right? Slid sideways off the bed and like turned and was just like I am right here, but on her knees. Or her legs were under her. And I walked up to her and I said, "Are you dead?" And I poked her in the head with the tip of the gun, and she let out a moan, and I shot her in the head. And I was standing there looking at her dead body. And she stayed in that position. She just slumped down. And then I hear Amanda screaming my name. And when I turned around, James wasn't there anymore.
He's running for his life.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Okay, after seeing that one, now I've got a real problem with the guy. I've got a massive problem with him because he's telling us this story of the execution that he perpetrates, and he's now very exercised. Like, he's narrating this one with a great amount of energy. He's got these incredible kind of movements in. He has to go for both hands on the phone in order to narrate the whole thing. He's very, very engaged in this. Why didn't we see the same narration, the same level of exorcism and engagement in his battles with demons right at the start? That's an incredible drama. That's an incredible thing. That's an amazing thing. Like, why not the same emotional, physical engagement? Why such engagement in this? Why not such engagement in that? I'm now confused as to where his energy is, where his focus is on this. Is it with redemption, or is it with amazing stories of executions? Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, and I think in his life and in most people, if he is a psychopath, I'm not sure that I'm sold on it, but they are very, very physical people. And if they go through anything emotional, they won't narrate hardly anything. That's kind of kept inside of a little nanotainer inside of their bodies. But watch his hands here. They start shaking.
You know the nanotainer.
Yes.
Theranos. That's great, man. If nobody knows, that was so funny. It's too inside, maybe. Sorry.
Maybe. I think a lot of people will get it.
Yeah, they'll get it.
But his hands start shaking while he's describing the moment that he shot this woman, this victim. There's no drama in his tone. There's no moral performance. He's flat. He's procedural about this whole thing. But the tremor, I think, gives something away. And it's not like he's trying to demonstrate that to us. He's not trying to show us a tremor. And if you notice what he does, he shifts this prison phone to the other hand here, and he tries to hide it, tries to conceal it. I don't think that's showmanship at all. I don't think there's any showmanship in this at all. So what this usually signals is some kind of conflict. There's recall, there's control. The body's replaying the amperage of that memory while it's trying to suppress it to stay composed for the interview. This is where it gets interesting because he's not adding language to shape our perception. None. I don't think there's any justification. There's no spiritual overlay in that. It's just physiology, and I think his physiology is showing a whole lot here. So while everything else he says might be rehearsed, maybe, that little movement looks like the nervous system is telling the truth, and I think it shows us that he's not concealing it, and he's not performing that. So the further a body part is from the head, the harder it is to control during periods of stress. I don't know where I got this from, some ancient book.
Desmond Morse. Yep.
Yeah. Book was written when Greg was born in 1927 or whatever this year was.
Pretty close.
Right.
1900s.
And I teach something called a narrative circle, where you can draw a circle on a piece of paper with a big plus sign through it, and it will expose all these parts of the story. I'm not going to go into it right now, but I guarantee you it's in the description of this video. Just click the link to download the notes, and I'll throw that in there for you as a bonus. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, here's what's telling. Mark, you said he doesn't show all this physical stuff when he's talking about battles with demons because he didn't experience it. This is a very physical, tangible guy. And I can tell you, I don't think he cares what you think. I think he cares what you think to get his story out. But if you told him you didn't like him, he would write that off because he's got the capability to compartmentalize your opinion of him even better than most people you'd meet. Because a lot of bad guys who've done a lot of horrible shit to people, that's who they are. They're quite capable of it. Here's the interesting piece. He does a great deal. We always talk about residual emotion. Today, if you ask me about some of the worst things that are happening in my life, I'm going to have emotion and animation associated with them. And I'm going to remember it. And I'll tell you about getting hit in the face or that kind of thing. When he's talking about murdering this woman, which is what we're talking about, he's telling you everything that happened. Look at his face. There's surprise. There's wide-eyed, brows up. He's telling the story effectively with his body. Their only residual emotions whatsoever about that entire incident are surprise and excitement. Watch it. Go back and watch it. What we want to see in a person who is repentant, I'm going to use his words, although I haven't heard that one yet, are remorse, grief, shame. None of that. Just excitement and surprise. That's kind of crazy. It's kind of like if I told you, I'm in Kentucky. I went to the Kentucky Derby. Not I murdered somebody and she landed on the side of the bed. Well, how do you feel about that would be my question. I don't think he would have the right answer, because I think what we're probably dealing with here, and this is very difficult for people, is, well, let me go back and say one last thing. The only indicator otherwise is a little bit of lip grooming and maybe a little lip compression, which could be withheld opinion or withheld emotion. That's all I see. I think what you deal with is some people have one emotion, and that one emotion is rage, and every other emotion triggers that emotion. And you got to be careful with people like that, because they typically are very violent. And Chase, you and I have known people who came back damaged who have that same problem because they have one emotion from PTSD. So this is a very dangerous kind of a person who can recall all these things with all that excitement, but not show a single bit of remorse, because you know he's feeling what happened when that was going on. Scott, what do you got?
I agree. There should be a range of emotions with this, but he doesn't have that. There should be a little sadness in here. There should be a little concern. There should be grief. There should be several different things in here, but there aren't, because he doesn't have the ability to. I don't think he has that range emotionally to feel those things. So when he's talking about all this, talking about the phone chase, he looks like he's on the phone with Amazon talking about, if you turn the sound off, asking where his package is because it didn't show up. In some places, he looks almost unconcerned with what was happening. But I think this is a great example of someone who's explaining a horrific deed they've done. Something's horrible, and the right emotions aren't being shown. They're not showing the right expressions or the right emotions during all that. Zero. So I think that falls, in my opinion, on the nature side of a psychopath. More of I'm going to go with more nature on that side. It can be both, but on this side, I would say nature on that one. So that's all I've got on that one. We good?
Was she praying, or was that
No, it's just that when I shot her like in the hip-ish area, it flew her. She flew, right? Slid sideways off the bed and like turned and was just like I am right here, but on her knees. Or her legs were under her. And I walked up to her and I said, "Are you dead?" And I poked her in the head with the tip of the gun, and she let out a moan, and I shot her in the head. And I was standing there looking at her dead body. And she stayed in that position. She just slumped down. And then I hear Amanda screaming my name. And when I turned around, James wasn't there anymore.
He's running for his life. So those people knocked on the door of the trailer. Mommy and Dad Adam started slapping and hitting them. They were bleeding. I told them to stop. Mommy said she wasn't going to stop.
Two people with shooting guns in her run outside. Her dead.
Her dead? Who's dead, Ryan?
Mommy and Dad Adam laid them in the sand to sleep, and we left with both trailers.
Wow.
What do you make of that?
I think that's terrible that she saw her. So she obviously didn't, I never slapped them or anything like that, but she witnessed more than I thought she did.
She could perceive something terrible was happening.
Right. And really part of what she said is kind of accurate, right? It's just distorted in the mind of a child, because while she obviously probably saw me dragging the bodies, Michelle, out of the trailer.
Maybe digging in the sand?
Well, I don't know how she would see that, but she saw us with the shovels. So she's just probably put, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when we had pulled back up and everything, the first thing was, what am I going to do with the bodies, right?
All right, Chase, what do you got?
So we're showing this beautiful, innocent child in this room getting interviewed by this, what's most likely a forensic psychologist or maybe a state-appointed psychologist. Teal and blue are proven actually to calm the nervous system down. It's one of the few police departments I've seen that has this color on the wall, and NASA ran some studies on this stuff, and they showed that teal hues help maintain fine motor skills, and they cut fatigue by like 20%. And this is for the surgeons in the operating rooms and stuff. So it hits the sweet spot for a lot of us, and it's close to this color called Reflecting Pool by Sherwin-Williams. If you ever want to use it, I looked it up this morning. But right here, when the psychologist notes about the child's recollection or being read to him, listen for this tone shift. He almost breaks here. And this is a micro moment where his voice catches, and it's not performance at all, in my opinion. I think this is an emotional hiccup that we're seeing. You're going to see him regulate right after. He centers himself again, steadies his breathing, gets back to neutral. And that's important because a performer would typically lean into this. They would exaggerate this, and they use it to shape our perception. He does not do that at all. So what we're likely seeing here is a genuine emotional spike, and I think it's an autonomic reflex leaking through his exterior. And there's a little bit of grief or guilt for half a second, and then the prefrontal cortex just clamps back down again. So for analysis, this is the kind of moment that tells you the body still remembers and all this stuff. As a quick note, a lot of people believe that psychopaths don't feel emotion. That is a misconception. They do feel. It's usually connection and context that are impaired. So they can experience fear and guilt and sadness and even affection, but those do not really guide their behavior the way they do for most people. They don't. Those emotions don't become Jiminy Cricket like they do for all of us. They're kind of like colors without any meaning. They're visible, but they have no meaning to them. So when you see a flash like this, it doesn't automatically equal that he's remorseful, but it does mean there's a living reactive nervous system under the persona. And I think that matters. It's definitely going to matter in the next two videos that we look at. Scott, what do you got?
I watched this a couple of times, and I would be talking really graphically about what should be done with somebody like this, and I'm going to pass on this because what he did in front of that child, I'll end it there. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah. So look, totally agree, Chase. Just point of to note is it's really interesting with the interviewer of that child, how she feeds back the child's description exactly and does no unconscious correction of the child's. Yeah. No unconscious correction or conscious correction at all, which is brilliant what she does there to put that child at ease with the child's own language. Amazing. Let's get to the real subject here, the guy. Yeah, I agree, Chase. This is kind of an emotional scramble that he goes through. It's like he's on some shale bank, and there's little kind of tiny pebbles of emotion that kind of just pass through him really quickly, but he can't hold on to anyone. He can't sustain. So there's one part of him that can't suppress a very specific emotion, which is anger, essentially, cannot moderate it. There's another part of him that can't sustain any emotions for any length of time at all. So we get these two strong asymmetrical pulls of the mouth on either side. We get lip contractions, we get eye blocks, we get looks for approval and narrow-eyed targeting as well. So at the same time as saying, hey, am I okay? He's going, I'm going to come and get you. At the same, so these fleet across him. And then we get full kind of body retreat and almost an asymmetry in the body as well. So there's a lot of emotions in there, but none of them for very long. So we could go, hey, look, clearly he's not feeling any of those, and he's just kind of rifling through them to kind of find one that he might want to play on the interviewer, but he doesn't pick on one. Or we could go, no, he's not. He has all of these emotions, but he doesn't know how they work, how they're attached to anything, just as you're saying there, Chase, and which one would be right, or that he can even sustain one for long enough. So, I'll just go back to what I said originally. For me, it's an emotional scramble on this very, I always use the word delicate, but very unsure is a better word. Very unsure emotional rock face, which is just peeling away under his hands. It just has no substance. It has no firm foundation to it. There, I'm extending that metaphor as far as I can. Greg, what do you got on this one?
So feelings are complex things that have value in society, in some societies. They don't in prison. This guy's been in prison most of his life. He said that. He was in the Aryan Brotherhood and all these other things. This is a complex mess of a guy. I mean, what we do see is some genuine emotion. I said in here for a fleeting moment, I thought we were going to get some humanity for a fleeting moment because I saw a grief muscle. And the grief muscle is something that, you'll hear people say it's not true. It's this thing, this little arch in your forehead. It isn't a muscle, it's 5 muscles. And the way they clamp and pull in is when people are feeling grief, sometimes concern, but concern doesn't finish the horseshoe. It's simply furrowing. When you see that, Darwin and Duchenne were the first guys to call it the grief muscle. Good indicator there's something serious going on. That happens very rapidly and it disappears. There's contempt, Mark. I saw the same thing, contempt or disdain for the situation, left side of his mouth and then a little bit on the right. There's mild lip compression to contain that emotion, and then it goes away. What I think we're seeing, my opinion, is a person who has learned that emotions are not valuable. They're not. I don't know whether he was a psychopath. I don't know any of that. But what I do know is this guy, there's something going on. That, by the way, that nystagma with the eyes, you can't miss it in this clip. It's one of the most pronounced. His eyes are bouncing left and right. But he immediately takes away that moment of humanity, disappears, because that frontal lobe, that person who's in there, who's been driving this car all of his life, takes over again and then starts fact-checking a 3-year-old. He actually starts saying, well, that's not what happened. It couldn't be that. She couldn't have seen that. Oh, well, maybe she did this. It makes me wonder, if you've ever seen anybody Valiumed out of their brain, they don't have emotions or control and they kind of rifle away and just disappear. Those mood suppressing kind of things, but they don't have any, and he's got plenty. Then you get back to his baseline when he starts describing the bodies of these two people. His hands come up, they rise, he moves. It's easy for him to talk about. He even leans in and makes hard eye contact with David as he says, what am I going to do with the bodies, right? That is such a weird mix. I think what we're seeing is more suppression of feelings, whatever those feelings are. And maybe it's a good thing, because if he can suppress these, maybe he can learn to suppress those others. And if rage is the only emotion that you see value in because of your environment, you sure as hell need to learn to suppress that one. That's what I got.
So those people knocked on the door of the trailer. Mommy and Dad Adam started slapping and hitting them. They were bleeding. I told them to stop. Mommy said she wasn't going to stop.
2 people was shooting guns in her run outside. Her dad.
Her dad? Who's dad, Ryan?
Mommy and Dad Adam laid them in the sand to sleep, and we left with both trailers.
Wow.
What do you make of that?
I think that's terrible that she saw her. So she obviously, never slapped them or anything like that, but, she witnessed more than I thought she did.
She could perceive something terrible was happening.
Right. And really, part of what she said is kind of accurate, right? It's just distorted in the mind of a child, because while she obviously probably saw me dragging the bodies Michelle out of the trailer.
Maybe digging in the sand.
Well, I don't know how she would see that, but she saw us with the shovels, so she's just probably put, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when we had pulled back up and everything, the first thing was, what am I going to do with the bodies, right?
The sheriff who deployed that team said later that he's one of those individuals I believe is capable of absolute terror. Even the men who apprehended you sounds like were scared.
Okay.
Did you pick up any of that?
The U.S. Marshals? Yeah, I could tell they were afraid of me.
What state of mind were you then? Were you going to attack?
I wanted to really badly. I wanted to.
If you had your gun, would you have shot at them?
Oh, 100%. If I would have had the opportunity to, I would have, yes. When they first arrested me, there was a dude had a gun on his leg, right? And it was just rattling around. So the whole time I'm sitting there with the handcuffs on, I'm like, I can get that gun out.
Wow.
I can get that gun out.
Criminally minded to the end.
I know how to hit handcuffs in a certain way if they're not double locked to where I can open them. I learned it in the feds. So that was my goal, right? Is hopefully he won't double lock them, or I can get them loose enough to where I can get my hand out. Or while he's loosening them, I'll have an opportunity.
But you're there in custody, surrounded by elite Mexican police, U.S. Marshals, and you're still plotting.
Yep.
What does that say about you?
You tell me.
Criminally minded?
Criminally minded, sure, yeah. I think it says that I don't ever give up. I will never quit. I will never give up. I just don't have that in me. I'm not a quitter. If I'm going to see something out, I'm going to see it out to the end.
Did it never occur to you that you could take your intelligence and competitive nature and direct it in a different direction?
I wish more than anything, David, that I would have done something other than the things I've done in my life.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
So here we do see some what I think is residual emotion. Remember, we talked about him having residual emotions of excitement and that because he exposes his canines. You guys always talk about micro expressions or micro gestures. He exposes those canines pretty quickly, either because he's trying to do disgust and contains it, but you can see it. It's a quick rise. He's also, this is when David's talking about the sheriff. My guess is the sheriff is a negative memory for him. Maybe he got manhandled. Maybe he didn't like the sheriff, maybe something else. Because you can see it. He'll turtle, meaning he'll draw his neck down into his body. He's kind of turtled at this point. There's a quick flash of his canines, which we associate with rage. There's rapid head shaking in terms of forced acceptance, as that sheriff said that he was capable of terror. Then there's emotional eye accessing down and to the right when David asked, people were afraid of you. Boom, he's back in his homeland now. You watch him. When he goes down right, he comes back out of it, and he's not at all that same rage in his face or any of that. It just dissipates. And then he starts talking about his criminal skills or his criminal tradecraft. And he's talking about getting out of handcuffs. By the way, most cops are going to double lock handcuffs. It's just the way it is. Because they know you can get out of them. People can pick them with a little bit of anything. Then he's back to that prideful chin we saw earlier, slightly up, and maybe a hint of a smile, as David calls him, criminally minded. Then he's back to his persuasion, hard eye lock. I think it's important. Well, he's also in prison. Look, it's important that you're not perceived as weak in prison. Absolutely. He's got a long history. He's Aryan Brotherhood guy. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for him to hide emotion as it goes. But seeing that rage flash on his face and then seeing it disappear when he gets some admiration for people being afraid of him, that is a point of pride for him, it appears to me. Maybe you see something different. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so he's very excited, very exercised on the seeing the officer's gun and the advantage that he has through that. So that's, again, why didn't we see such excitement around other elements? The whole time I'm sitting there with the handcuffs on and we see disgust. I agree, Greg, on that. He doesn't like sitting there with the handcuffs on. However, and then David says, criminally minded. to the end, which is a nice provocation from him there. And then he takes us methodically through his rational way of understanding the system of how you get cuffs on. It's like a piece of engineering that he is excited in taking us through. Well, just as there's that kind of engineering, there's engineering of demonology. Like, you know, depending on what system, you've got potentially 72 demons that you could pick from. So why not take us through the engineering of the demons that were inside you around then, rather than the engineering of how to take off cuffs? You know, why pick one rather than the other? Because one is very true for him and the other is probably less true, or he's investigated less. But I mean, if I were possessed, I'd really want to investigate that stuff. I'd really want to do my work, and I'd really want to tell people about that, because it would be my new big thing, you know, if it were true. So he's got one piece of engineering and excitement for the cuffs, and no engineering and excitement for this possession idea that he gave us early on. He's just not following through on his alibi, I guess, around this, or his newfound faith or reasoning for why he is how he is. Scott, what do you got?
When people see somebody like this talking, they think they're telling the truth because they're in prison and they're a changed person, all that. That's not what's going on here. This guy's still full of it. He's not being honest. He's never been honest. His history shows everything you'd see in the, if not creation of, in the path a psychopath would follow. When he was young, he was into drugs and got in trouble with the law. The older he got, the more trouble he got into. Then he started a serial attacking women. And it's the worst kind of attack you can possibly imagine. So he's got that going on. Not only is he a murderer, he's also a serial attacker in that way. He has everything you need to be a psychopath in here, from, in my opinion, from the nurture side and as well as the nature side. However, the tattoos are what bother me, because what we know now from studies is that someone who has a lot of tattoos, that shows they have a lot of anxiety. Now, there are some nature side psychopaths with a lot of tattoos, but they don't have them all over their body and their hairline and everything else like this guy does, that I've seen after reading the studies on that and looking for pictures and those types of things, and people who are in prison that we know are full-blown psychopaths. They don't have them as much. So that lets us know this guy, if he is the nurtured kind, he actually is having anxiety, and it must be through the roof because he's got all his tattoos all over him. So the more you have, they've shown, the more anxiety you would experience. But at the same time, it would be odd for a psychopath to have anxiety, because we know they don't, especially when it comes to the nature style psychopath. So there's that. Going back, Chase brought up how they have feelings and stuff. Yeah, that's one of the things they have. But this would be a little bit clearer on the feeling side because of the amount of tattoos this guy has. So he's still full of it, I think, here. And Mark, the reason that you're not seeing that excitement anywhere else when he's telling this story about, oh, I can get out of the handcuffs and all that, because it's just a story. He wasn't about to get out of those handcuffs. That's the story he's telling in prison. That's the story he's telling to all of his friends to be like the tough guy. He's telling the story that makes him the hero. So as he goes through this. So he's sitting there going, yeah, I could have gotten a gun and I could have done this. I could have killed all of them. And there it was. And there he is, the hero to all the other criminals in prison. So no, that's not true. I think he's full of it on that. So it's not the first time he's told this story. It's structured. He's told it so many times. He's really excited about it. He's gotten good at it, because watch how everything changes. He leans back, gets his illustrators going, and he's performing the story as he goes. So this is just a big fish story. And it's not true. You know, he may have seen those things and thought about it later, but seeing the shaking gun, those are too many specifics you get into that you really don't pay attention to in a situation like that. So again, he's just trying to be the hero of his own story. And then David's like, wow, you know, criminal to the end or whatever. He's playing this idiot like a fiddle, and he's getting ready. Well, he's doing it well for a reason. How's that sound? I'll leave it there. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, it's actually true about the handcuffs. Even if they are double locked, you can actually hit them toward the side that double locks, which is why they teach you to handcuff people behind their back, in the backs of their hands facing each other, and always go tight. And it's almost impossible to get out of that situation. And with his gun rattling around in the holster, if you did a deployment or you did some time in the military and had a lot of gunfighting stuff, you know exactly what brand that holster was, which I won't say here because we'll probably get sued. But the system that I teach is called NCI. And in NCI, we have these things called a needs map. And a needs map is typically what was maybe lacking in childhood, but it shows up as what we need from other people when we grow up. So it's a social need. And what we're really seeing here is this need to feel significant and a need for other people to think that he is significant. And the social absence from this comes from some early loss of agency or dominance. And it's usually a lot of environments where control was taken from a child, physically, socially, to go to Scott's theory about this being a nurture thing. A lot of these nurture things coming up, which Scott's already pointed out. And the behavioral indicators of this is the aggressive assertion of presence. They use violence as a proof of existence in a lot of these cases, power demonstrations, which we know he does. And that becomes kind of a substitute for like a connection. But the resulting insecurities, when you see this need for significance, there's a deep fear of weakness or submission. They feel unsafe unless they're in control. They react with rage and just defiance. But the core fear behind this is a fear of powerlessness and being humiliated, maybe being dominated by something. So it's authoritarian, commanding posture, and internally there's a fragile self-image that's dependent on some level of control. But we're really seeing that here. And I think, Scott, I don't know how much was false here, but I think that he's actually saying what he was thinking in his head. I think he believed that about his own capabilities. Not that he's John Wick, but I think in his head, in that moment, he was going to John Wick that whole entire room full of dudes.
Yeah,
that's all.
He's been in jail a bunch of times.
I think he might have seen that, but I don't think he's man enough to take the opportunity. I don't think he's got the, what to do it, or he would have done it. If he's that, that much of a badass, then he would have done it and saying, I could have done this, and at least he would have tried. So that's why I'm all worked up about that guy. I just see he's so full of it, I can't stand it. Ugh.
Tell us more.
That's it. I'm sorry, man. I'm raging about this guy over here. Holy smokes.
The sheriff who deployed that team said later that he's one of those individuals I believe is capable of absolute terror. Even the men who apprehended you sounds like we're scared.
Okay.
Did you pick up any of that?
The U.S. Marshals? Yeah, I could tell they were afraid of me.
What state of mind were you then? Were you going to attack?
I wanted to really badly. I wanted to.
If you had your gun, would you have shot at them?
Oh, 100%. If I would have had the opportunity to, I would have, yes. When they first arrested me, there was a dude had a gun on his leg, right? And it was just rattling around. So the whole time I'm sitting there with the handcuffs on, I'm like, I can get that gun out.
Wow.
I can get that gun out.
Criminally minded to the end.
I know how to hit handcuffs in a certain way if they're not double locked to where I can open them. I learned it in the feds. So that was my goal, right? Is hopefully he won't double lock them, or I can get them loose enough to where I can get my hand out. Or while he's loosening them, I'll have an opportunity.
But you're there in custody, surrounded by elite Mexican police, U.S. Marshals, and you're still plotting.
Yep.
What does that say about you?
You tell me.
Criminally minded?
Criminally minded, sure, yeah. I think it says that I don't ever give up. I will never quit. I will never give up. I just don't have that in me. I'm not a quitter. If I'm going to see something out, I'm going to see it out to the end.
Did it never occur to you that you could take your intelligence and competitive nature and direct it in a different direction?
I wish more than anything, David, that I would have done something other than the things I've done in my life.
You know, a lot of felons find Jesus in jail.
Yeah, and I've always actually looked down on them, right? And for real, too. It's just like, look at them, fake ass, right? That is really how I looked at it.
Is it because you doubt the sincerity of their faith, or you just don't respect a man who won't engage in violence?
Both. I have nothing to gain from saying I'm a Christian now. I'm not trying to go back on appeal. They will never let me out of here. Finding God and forgiveness and grace was something that I needed, or I would have ended up killing myself in here. It's just like something like passed over me. And it's called the Holy Spirit. I felt it. The hair stood up on me, on my arms, and I felt the Holy Spirit. And that's how I know God is real. And that's why I know that change is possible, is because I feel it. I feel the Holy Spirit. I don't care what anyone thinks about me.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
So there's some genuine amusement when he's talking about these jailhouse Christians. He actually smiles. We didn't see this any other time. So maybe that's nervous energy, maybe it's whatever, but it looks like a genuine smile. His body language is back to telling illustrators, tied to the words he's saying. It's congruent. He's saying something. His hands are punctuating. We say illustrators are your brain punctuating its thoughts. Those are going out at the right time. He's also telling, when he starts with talking about getting religion, look at his fingers extended and separated. We usually associate that with confidence. And then when he makes a point about the Holy Spirit, pounds his fist, looks good. All this looks good to me. It looks like, okay, this is part of why when I go all the way back to the first one, I think you don't have to believe what he believes for him to have a belief that is powerful. And so whatever it takes, and he's telling you where he got this religion when he walks through it. So I always say that is one of the most insulating things in the world. There are plenty of cults in the world today where people feel righteous and justified and are far, 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 far from what you would call righteous and justified. But they're insular enough and they look out for each other enough that the whole idea behind most churches, Christian churches or others, is that if you hang out with people of like thought, you'll reinforce that thought. We all know that's true. And if there's no outside influence, then that's how cults get to be formed. You get an alpha leader who everybody has to mimic and go to. So I'm going to say this reinforces my belief in the beginning that he has found religion. Whether you believe in that religion he's found or not, or you think it, and Scott, I can already see your face, so I'm going to hand it off to you next. But I don't see anything here that makes me doubt it at all. It doesn't matter whether I believe and understand what he believes. It matters what he believes. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, because I went through those smiles really tight and heavy, man. And what I saw wasn't a true smile. It gets close. And what he's doing, he's selling here. That's why he looks that way. And he's used to seeing that because he's seen the people that he learned this from doing the same thing. Because when you smile, you do your eyes squint and all that, but his aren't squinting the way they're supposed to squint when you're doing a real smile. When you're doing a real smile, they should come down at an angle like this because your brain is doing that, not you. Because when you do it, you just push them up. Your brain is the one that makes them come in, the sides coming in at an angle, those little wrinkles right there. And that's the orbicularis oculi is being pulled up instead of pushed up, and then pushed down instead of pulled down. So that's the big difference there. You're not doing it. In other words, subconsciously, your brain's doing it because it's a true smile. We don't see those cheek indentations that we see with a real smile. That gets me too. And we don't see all the little things, or not all of them, but most of the things we see with real smiles aren't there. We don't see when he smiles, when he changes from that emotion that he was supposed to be feeling. We didn't see him open up a little bit. Most of the time when somebody smiles after they've been feeling, stressed or whatever he's feeling right there, anything before that, then they'll open up just a little bit. We don't even see him move back a little bit. We don't see that thing when he starts smiling. We don't see that there. So that really bothers me there. I don't believe he's found religion, Greg. It's one of me and you old butt heads on this one. But I think this is just part of his manipulation tactics. That's what he's doing here. So, which follows again the psychopath protocol of manipulating people and making them believe you are something that you are not, especially in a religious sense, because that holds power. They try to put themselves in a position of power. So he tries to act like he knows all about this. So if somebody else needs it, he can go to him and talk to him about it and help him. That's why I think he's into that part of it. Because why else would he be into this except for to save his ego and to gain some kind of power against somebody else or a holy position of power? Man, I am getting worked up. Chase, what do you got?
Is your amygdala getting activated?
I think so, man. I hate this guy.
I believe him. I think that he has found it. If you just listen to a word that he uses here, it's one word. It's the word appeal. So on the surface, he's talking about his legal case, but watch the shift in tone when he moves into talking about the Holy Spirit or however he mentions it. There's a different appeal happening, and it's not a courtroom appeal. If you look at, I'm going to go full Mark Bowden here for a second. Etymologically, appeal comes from this Latin word, appellare, to call upon, to address. It literally means to call for help or to speak upward. And that's what's happening here. He's talking about a different kind of appeal. And for somebody who's lived his whole life controlling, taking, dominating, this kind of appeal is maybe about some release. And whether you believe in that experience or not, linguistically and behaviorally, I think it's a real appeal. It's just not the kind that gets you out of jail or prison, whatever this is. So what might actually be happening in his brain right here is the frontal lobe, this part that does control and planning and logic, it steps back a little, and the more emotional and meaning-based areas start moving forward. The big one here is this thing called the TPJ. This is the temporal parietal junction. This is the part where people have mystic experiences, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, all that kind of stuff happens in that TPJ. But it's also the part of our brain that handles perspective taking. So this is our sense of where I end and somebody else begins. And in these little spiritual moments, activity right there can change. So the boundary between self and other people softens, and people describe it as oneness or whatever other Dalai Lama kind of word you want to throw in there. It's not that his TPJ grew. What happens in prison is the connections around it loosen up after years of isolation and reflection. And that lets people access emotional integration that was totally walled off before. So what we're seeing could be the brain's wiring literally letting him feel connected again or something like that. I'll leave it there. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, okay. So we'll find out in another video what may have caused this experience to occur. When he says something like passed over me, and it's called the Holy Spirit. I felt it. So he doesn't quite know what it is. Something like the Holy Spirit passed over him. It's worrying because it could be a demon. Could be a demon because they come in the shape of the Holy Spirit sometimes. So according to some of the mythology around them, or actuality, as some people would think. So it's worrying that he says it's something like that. And he felt it, and his hair stood up on his arms, and he felt the Holy Spirit. So it's kind of God in the gap. If you can't explain it, it's God, or or maybe a demon. If I can't explain it, it's a demon or it's a God. May mean it's neither of those. It's just a gap that you can't quite name at the time. Anyway, he's got a name for it. Anyway, and it's quite self-preserving because he said, I needed it. I would have ended myself. So he needs it for him, not for others. Else it was existential for him. He was going to kill himself, he's saying. And, oh, by the way, Greg, we know he likes to be part of groups. He likes to be part of affinity groups because he was Aryan Nation and he has the tattoos. The thing about prison and tattoos is prison and tattoos go back a long, 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 long way, is that you get given what you're going to wear and what you're going to eat and when you're going to rise and but if you can get a tattoo, then that cannot be taken from you. And so various organizations within prison will have ritualized tattoos in order to know what rank you are, who you belong to, and that can be never taken away from you. You can only be ordered to cover them up. Hence, you might even start getting them on your face so that they can't cover up your identity and who you belong to. And that is somewhat different from Scott, as you were saying, the tattoos that might come from anxiety, i.e. body modification, scarification, which often comes in as many papers would tell us, alongside things like borderline personality disorder. There's also, of course, artistic tattoos, which is what ways of you want to use your body as a display rather than a modification in order to deal with some psychological pressure that you have. Anyway, here's what I'd say is that his descriptions of this Holy Spirit are not as ecstatic as his descriptions of violent acts. And so, yes, it's still possible he's found religion, he's found spirituality, but it doesn't seem to be on the ecstatic level that he had violence. And he can still speak about violence in a quite graphic, extreme, well-ordered and very descriptive way. He's not able to describe his spirituality. Of course, many people would say, well, it's ineffable, it's ununderstandable. How would you explain it? Yeah, that's a fair argument if you have God in the gap and it can never be explained. Fair argument on that.
You know, a lot of felons find Jesus in jail.
Yeah, and I've always actually looked down on them, right? And for real, too. It's just like, look at them, fake ass, right? That is really how I looked at it.
Is it because you doubt the sincerity of their faith, or you just don't respect a man who won't engage in violence?
Both. I have nothing to gain from saying I'm a Christian now. I'm not trying to go back on appeal. They will never let me out of here. Finding God and forgiveness and grace was something that I needed, or I would have ended up killing myself in here. It's just like something like passed over me. And it's called the Holy Spirit. I felt it. The hair stood up on me, on my arms, and I felt the Holy Spirit. And that's how I know God is real. And that's why I know that change is possible, is because I feel it. I feel the Holy Spirit. I don't care what anyone thinks about me.
In Hellbound, you only address the hell brought onto you and that you had to endure it, not the hell you created for people like the Butlers or these women you assaulted. Do you think that accepting Jesus as your savior wipes the slate clean?
Absolutely not. There is no wiping the slate clean when you've committed the kinds of horrific things that I've done in my life. I am forever going to be in that, known for that. It will always eat away at the end at me.
I don't know how much of Hellbound is your writing versus Ashley's writing and editing.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you have a lot of influence over it. She says in the booking correspondence that that you did not address these crimes in the book out of consideration for the victims. None of this is in Hellbound. Why not?
I wanted to do something for the victims' families. So this is going to be something totally separate.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
So in Hellbound, he's got a book. Has he got a book? Has he got a book? Just so you know, I've got a book. We've all got books, and you should go buy books. Books are fantastic. So it turns out, from what I can see, that he's got a book, and is that now something to do with why he's in this video? Often, we've been around a while, and we've looked at a lot of these situations. Often there's a book involved, and there does seem to be a book involved. And And David here now confronts him directly with this idea of remorse, that he has no remorse. And he switches to an emotion. And he says, I wanted to do something for the victims, and switches them back to data. This is something totally different. Now, I'm open to hearing what others feel about the veracity of these emotions and the crying. There's something there. There's something there, but it's too quick. It flashes too quickly. We're back into, here's an emotion, and here's another one. We're back to data. So is it true, real emotion, but he's just not able to hold it for any length of time? Or is he just playing us a line on this one and not able to deal with the factual thing that there's no remorse, because the book that he's selling at the moment is obviously full of graphic detail of murders, which, some people enjoy, and why not? If it's enjoyable, why not? Greg, what do you think?
I'll see your two reasons and give you a third.
Yeah?
Frustration. People cry out of frustration more often than sadness because it's loss of control, and people demonstrate that. What's interesting for me here, we see a flash that shows me he's containing rage. There's a couple of things. If you look, first of all, start off when he's being called on the carpet for causing hell for others, and not putting in the book. His brow goes down, his lower teeth are exposed. There's a flash of what's going on in his head. That's rage with constraint, in my opinion. And it's followed by a brow down and driving his points with words. Those are angry. That's powerful. That's telling. And he slows cadence as he talks about this is eating away at him. Okay, good. But when you say something's eating away at you, you expect to see grief or sadness or pain, not anger. Those words don't match anger. That tells me, again, I think his number one emotion is anger. It may substitute for other things, and he may feel like it is other things. And there can be a ton of reasons why. Still doesn't forgive him for, as they always say, the good Lord forgives, but we don't. You're in jail for a reason. For murdering in cold blood two people, one a Navy veteran retired. A Navy veteran retired, he killed. The guy had done nothing to him. So I think it's frustration, Mark. I don't think it's anything else. And I'm looking for everything that's possible to indicate that he's feeling pain. I do see a brief, very brief flash across his face of the two brows going to a point in the middle, and we associate that usually with sorrow. Don't know what that is, but right at the end of it, he does a request for approval and brings his head up again as he's asking questions. So I think it's frustration causing the crying, not pain. And maybe he doesn't understand what pain, I don't know exactly, but maybe it's a combination of just a soup of messed up emotions and things in there. Chase, what do you got other than answer?
I didn't know that it would do that. I've never done that on Zoom before. I don't know how to stop it. I guess it stopped. There we go. Sorry. So Hellbound, I guess, is this book. They're coming out with Ashley Green. I believe there's a second one also in the works called Heavenbound after that. Mm-hmm. But there's emotional accessing here that we've seen before at these critical moments, and it's at the times that we might expect to see it. This mentioning what he did, mentioning what the victims and their families endured, we see this emotional accessing again. If you hate this guy, maybe there's somebody, I won't mention any names, but it rhymes with Mott Mouse. If you hate this dude and you've already formed an opinion, and some people do, whether or not some people think we are good or crappy at what we do comes down to whether or not we help people convince themselves that they were right in the first place. But I think there is absolutely genuine emotion here. And just in case you're prone to massive cognitive bias and assumption making, I'm not saying any of this absolves him of anything, but it is, I think, genuine. Scott, what do you got?
I don't think it's genuine at all. Because if he did indeed believe that his slaves, if he believed that Jesus Christ died on the cross to save him from his sins, and that happened, yeah, his slate would be clean. But
I'm not saying he believes that.
Oh, I'm not.
He has a belief.
Okay, I got you, man. I got you. But if he believes that, then he doesn't have to worry about that. His slate is clean, but not by man's slate. He still has to pay for that. And that should actually be secondary to him. You know, man's slate. He shouldn't care about that because he should care about the first part of that, which he doesn't. So he doesn't have that understanding of how that works. He's pretending he does. And I think what we're seeing is performative. I think we're seeing fake all of this. And because he's going to sell that book. He's got his hell book, then he's got his heaven book. This cat's selling books, man. That's what's going on. It's really manipulative. So when he's talking about how he'll always feel bad about what he did, he's supposed to. That's the way of the world. But if he believes for true that forgiveness comes from God, he would talk about that, and he would make that juxtaposition of man and God's forgiveness while there's a difference. So, and he doesn't do that. So that would be his main thing. To go, like, look, understand this. He'd be wanting to teach that and wanting to talk about it, but he doesn't. So what he's doing is taking the Lord's name in vain. It's the same way when you see those TV preachers that are saying, oh, you just do this, this, and this, and everything's going to be great. You send me this, everything's going to be fine. You'll be original. That's what he's doing. He's not saying, God damn it, isn't taking the Lord's name in vain. When you do stuff like this, you enrich yourself from talking about God and saying you're a Christian and all that, and then making money with that. That's what he's doing. That's taking the Lord's name in vain, and that's wrong. And his book that he's got out that he's selling, this whole thing, it's all focused on him. That's what David's talking about. It's focused on him and focused on his problems and focused on how everything happened to him and what happened, his opinions on stuff, not his horrific behavior toward other people. So, yeah, this guy, he's on my last nerve. And he's on my, I've had it with this cat. I'm done. Is that all of us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's funny.
Man, I'm getting worked up over here. I should take
We're not done, though. We've got more videos. Don't go.
In Hellbound, you only address the hell brought onto you and that you had to endure it, not the hell you created for people like the butlers or these women you assaulted. Do you think that accepting Jesus as your savior wipes the slate clean?
Absolutely not. There is no wiping the slate clean when you've committed the kinds of horrific things that I've done in my life. I am forever going to be in that, known for that. It will always eat away at the end at me.
I don't know how much of Hellbound is your writing versus Ashley's writing and editing.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you have a lot of influence over it. She says in the booking correspondence that that you did not address these crimes in the book out of consideration for the victims. None of this is in Hellbound. Why not?
I wanted to do something for the victims' families. So this is going to be something totally separate.
But if you're writing this story, right? You're writing this story to, I mean, in your words, share it with the world in the hopes that somebody reads it and is helped by it. Why avoid your most depraved crimes?
I'm not avoiding it.
Well, in Hellbound, you did. I'm talking about in Hellbound.
Okay.
None of this is told in Hellbound.
I wanted to write it and have it be its own thing. And I wanted to donate all the proceeds to the victims' families.
Because these omissions, it starts to look like you are avoiding your most depraved crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is supposed to be a book where you're coming clean, right?
Right.
But it reads, right, almost like a whitewashing without addressing these crimes.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, all right.
It's like the opposite of coming clean. You don't talk about the worst of it. And I don't think the victim's family want to see, your woe is me book about your sad childhood without an honest accounting of what you did to their loved ones.
Okay.
Do you?
I see where you're coming from.
I'm going to ask you a lot of intensely personal questions. How do you explain it? The worst crime anyone can imagine. Do you feel like you took the fall for this murder? Tell me in your own words, what happened? Let's get started.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturdays at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, here's an interesting one because he's got some residual, that emotion's still flowing through. And we always say it should stick with you. If you're going to cry and you're going to have a reason to cry, there's that. But when he says, I'm not avoiding it, we're back to a little bit of anger in there. I think it's because he's frustrated. And I think it illustrates frustration even more. There's a lip compression. If you freeze the video, you'll see and this is very fleeting. There's a lip compression. His brows are down like he's condemning, and his blink rate increase all at the same time. That's a good indicator of anger in his face even though he's crying. So all that together is kind of interesting. And then he says something that tells me he really doesn't. This is a learned skill, probably something he learned in anger management class or somewhere like that. When he says, I see where you're coming from. That is a contained skill. And that's not compromise. That is a but. Anytime, if you really want to get in a really ugly argument with your spouse, when they say something, say that to them. I see where you're coming from. That'll just fire it up a little bit more. But people learn that if they have no other tools to control anger. And it's one of those things that we see. I think what we're seeing is a containment process this guy's running through to keep him from doing things that he shouldn't do. Look, I don't think there's ever a bad reason to do a good thing. If he found religion and it contains his rage and it keeps him from doing something horrible, whether it's a religion you believe in or not, I think it's a good thing. That's just my opinion. Scott or Chase, what do you got? I'll give Scott a second to cool down.
Oh, thanks.
Simmer down. I'm going to be short, so I'll throw it right over. I think it's surprising not to see more anger as he's being confronted over and over and over in this video, which I would have expected to see from a guy like this. We even see an eyebrow flash here, an eyebrow flash. They go up, and this is in response to his saying that he understands the family might be upset. And this is interesting. There's an actual eyebrow flash there. I think his entire behavioral pattern can be summarized as dominance, collapse, and redemption. And that's what he sees this as. Maybe that's a story arc, and Mark will talk about this as some Brothers Grimm story or something like that. I don't know. But we have this dominance. This is creating fear to feel some kind of realness in life. Then we have a collapse mechanism. This is external control. This is law enforcement, imprisonment, the U.S. Marshals he was talking about, and then redemption, seeking some kind of moral narrative to re-inflate significance, because the significance, there's a vacuum for him to feel significant. And this might be some kind of moral narrative. Not saying that it's not true. Maybe I think he does feel like he found something. And an interesting note here versus his previous behavior, when he recounts these times of being violent, his chin goes up. You can see this kind of defiance gesture. His head lifts, his voice steadies down, and he gets more dominant in his speaking and his tone. His tone goes down. But Scott, tell us, how good of a guy do you think? He's an okay.
He's okay. Well, for me, this is the most agitated he's been. And when he talks, pay attention to how far his mouth doesn't open, because he's fighting anger while he's trying to look benevolent during all this. And those two things don't mix well together. So we're seeing anger and frustration and withholding the anger in an attempt to look innocent and pure. An attempt to look innocent and make you feel sorry for him. But notice his movements are all jerky as he's jerking around. Then David kind of sticks him when he says, it looks like you're avoiding your most depraved crimes. Then he leans back and he adjusts in his seat, and that's when we see that flash of anger. You know, when these little muscles here pull up really quickly, that's what we're seeing. And his eyes widen a little bit, and he locks in on David. So that's contained anger all day long. He's trying to hold that in. I think he's doing a dang good job of doing it. So that's what I'm saying. But then David, while all this is going on, the stuff we're seeing is like, holy smokes. David looks like he's just giving his order at Cracker Barrel or something, you know. He's just, and that's which is making Williams even more uncomfortable, you know, because he's trying not to be mad. And then David's like, yeah, really? Well, and just talking to him like that. So I think David's good at doing this, and that combination there of just that type of personality with David talking to him, man, that's good. He would make such a good interrogator because sometimes you got to make somebody mad and get up under there. I think he could do it with no problem. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so this is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and David is Michael Caine, and the subject here is the Steve Martin character. Do you remember when the Steve Martin character is pretending that he can't walk? And Michael Caine wants to prove to, I think, the Mark that he can walk, and he repeatedly whips the Steve Martin character on the shins, and tears are rolling down, but he can't do anything. Can't do anything. Well, this is David whipping this guy on the shins, and he absolutely wants to jump through that glass and over that desk and throttle David, and he can't do it. And I believe you're absolutely right. It is the frustration of that. Those tears are real. He wants to murder this guy because it's an unfair world out there. It may well be that there's two books there. There's one book full of gore and violence, and there's another book full of salvation and apologies for the victims, maybe. But we're not doing that interview. We're not seeing that right now. And so it's really unfair because you're telling me you've done both. You're going to do both. You're going to make it good. But I'm not seeing that. And so it's super unfair and frustrating for you because what we're going to do is say, it doesn't matter. You're worthless. It isn't enough. It isn't enough. And you're going to go, yeah, but I can't put the two things together. No, you can't put the two things together. You can't do them together, and you can't do them separately. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. It's a really unfair, frustrating world. Welcome to it. And all of us, when we're in an unfair and frustrating world, we don't murder people. We just don't do it. Yeah, we have moderation, and you did. And you may be, I suspect, you would still. And I think I'd be pretty much 100% accurate about that because I don't believe at this point you can moderate out in this frustrating real world that you'd actually be able to moderate your emotions for any length of time because it's really frustrating and annoying. I mean, it's just full of people, full of strangers who say the daftest stuff. And you have to button it and go, okay, and you have to move on. I mean, just look at the comments below. And, some of them are full of love and some of them are full of hate, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing we can do, and so we moderate ourselves. And that's what we're seeing now is your utter frustration around this. And it's beautiful to see those tears.
But if you're writing this story, right? You're writing this story to, in your words, share it with the world in the hopes that somebody reads it and is helped by it. Why avoid your most depraved crimes?
I'm not avoiding it.
Well, in Hellbound, you did. I'm talking about in Hellbound.
Okay.
None of this is told in Hellbound.
I wanted to write it and have it be its own thing. And I wanted to donate all the proceeds to the victims' families.
Because these omissions, it starts to look like you are avoiding your most depraved crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is supposed to be a book where you're coming clean, right?
Right.
But it reads, right, almost like a whitewashing without addressing these crimes.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, all right.
It's like the opposite of coming clean. You don't talk about the worst of it. And I don't think the victim's family want to see, your woe is me book about your sad childhood without an honest accounting of what you did to their loved ones.
Okay.
Do you?
I see where you're coming from.
Michelle Butler, a mom, hard worker, told me your epiphany happened when you envisioned them in your cell forgiving you. Were you sober at that point?
Oh, no. I had been awake for 6 days, I think.
You're not asking for forgiveness. from the Butler family?
I don't deserve their forgiveness. I'm trying, I want to try and give them some sort of closure. I can't ask them for anything. I don't deserve anything. How selfish of that would be of me to ask them for forgiveness. I can't ask them for that. I would like to tell them I'm sorry. So I looked over at the camera. I am sincerely sorry that I robbed you of a life with your mom, with your dad. I did that, and I'm so sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I apologize for my actions.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
So when you have people with severely blunted empathy or antisocial traits, and they're showing emotion, it's usually not about the suffering that they caused. So even if that's part of the discussion that's going on here, it's typically about their own. They can feel sadness and guilt, even grief, but the focus is usually inward. Look what I've lost. Look what I've done to myself. Look what my life has become. So the emotion is real. The orientation of it is usually self-referential. So on this, we've talked about this needs map earlier, like our social needs, what we need from other people. There's 6 basic social needs, and we all typically have one and then maybe a secondary one. The secondary for him is the need for significance. We talked about strength and power earlier, but significance needs come up when we have a chronic invisibility or emotional neglect in these formative years. We feel unimportant to caregivers or the system as a whole. And the behavior of these people, they are hyper-focused on being noticed. And sometimes it's through dominance or spectacle sometimes. But the resulting insecurities of this significance need is I feel meaningless or super replaceable. And I need to prove my worth through intensity or some kind of notoriety. And the fear that drives this behavior is irrelevance, being forgotten or dismissed or unseen. And these people will typically crave some kind of attention through infamy, and they'll use fear or fascination. It's typically one of those two things, fear or fascination, to get some kind of social presence and remembrance there. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah. So this is his second, as far as I can understand it, epiphany, because he said he was hinting he had a first one with the radio and beating up the cellmate, if I'm right. So
changed.
Yeah, he changed. Okay, he was never the same afterwards. Yes, he doesn't intimate how he was different. Anyway, another epiphany of some sort. I guess in this second one, he's definitely talking about epiphany in terms of a manifestation of Christ for him. Now he says, and it's a good story because it's monastic, isn't it? He contemplates in a cell, and then there's this epiphany. He contemplates, he says he's awake for 6 days. Greg, you've kept people awake. Have you ever?
52 hours. 52 hours is the magic number.
Right. Okay. So 6 days for me is like, no.
Oh, no. All I'm saying is at about 52 hours, if I remember my numbers right, it's been years, we discovered that 52 hours fully awake was the magic moment. Everyone will have a hallucination if they haven't.
Exactly. So hallucination, definitely like 72 hours, 96 is psychosis. So 6 days. So that's 4 days. So that's 3 days hallucination. 4 days psychosis. He says 6 days. If that's true, yeah, I mean, you are going to have an epiphany. Yeah, something very radical is going to happen very, very,
You'd have
Very-
a pet brontosaurus. By that
Well, actually,
time.
it's interesting you mentioned the brontosaurus chase, because I was thinking you were saying about earlier on that that the furthest parts away from your brain, your body is. They reckon that a brontosaurus, if you'd have chopped off the end of its tail, it would have taken a couple of minutes for the signal to go up to the brain and back again for it to move its tail. You know, because it was such a large bit. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it's a great idea, isn't it? That it was so big that it would take, it just wouldn't be able to sustain any attack to its tail, because it wouldn't know anything's happening until the tail was bitten off by something. Anyway, 6 days, unlikely, but likely he could have been awake. If he was awake for a number of days, yes, he would have had a very life-shattering event happen to him, whether he was looking for it or not, or whether powers outside of him were looking for him to have it. You would, I would, if we kept ourselves awake for really more than 3 days. We're going to see something quite extraordinary. Scott, what you got on this one?
Yeah, I don't think this looks like somebody who understands the feelings he's claiming to have. Because as he's talking to the camera, you know, supposedly the family, he looks like he's ordering something from Waffle House. It looks like he's ordering food somewhere. Those aren't the expressions that would go with that, in my opinion. You'd see something, you'd see some sadness, you'd see some grief in there, you'd see sorrow in there. If he's supposed to be feeling sorry for what happened, we don't see that. So when he says, "I'm sorry for robbing you of a life with your mom," there's a single shoulder shrug there. I think it's his right shoulder. And so that lets us know that he's not confident with that answer, or maybe being deceptive about that. So I think he's showing not enough confidence, along with the grief and sadness he should be showing when he's telling me he's sorry for what happened here. So I don't think there's any sadness when he says those things. So that's where I'll leave mine. Is that everybody? Or Greg?
No, I haven't been. Yeah, I would say the one thing that is missing is the stuff you're talking about. It has all the sincerity of a Hollywood apology in that way. But if all you have is rage, if that's your only emotion and you're containing that emotion and you think it is the right thing to do based on your newfound religious belief to apologize, it's perfectly believable. Perfectly believable. If you feel like you're a Christian, but you have no capability of understanding feelings and no capability of demonstrating those feelings, I think it's just as good as most of our Hollywood apologies. He's saying, I know I owe these people an apology, is what he's saying. That's what I see. I think he feels like he's a Christian. I don't know how long. That looking at the camera is because he's trying to assuage himself somehow with those guys. And I love the fact he explains it away, which means he knows that he clocked the camera. So it's a beautiful, beautiful example of all this containment, all this trying to be normal for the sake of whether it's selling books or persuading David that he's not as bad a person as he used to be, whatever it is. It's all coming together to one end for me. That's all I got.
Michelle Butler, a mom, hard worker, told me your epiphany happened when you envisioned them in your cell forgiving you. Were you sober at that point?
Oh, no. I had been awake for 6 days, I think.
You're not asking for forgiveness from the Butler family?
I don't deserve their forgiveness. I'm trying, I want to try and give them some sort of closure. I can't ask them for anything. I don't deserve anything. How selfish of that would be of me to ask them for forgiveness. I can't ask them for that. I would like to tell them I'm sorry. So I looked over at the camera. I am sincerely sorry that I robbed you of a life with your mom, with your dad. I did that, and I'm so sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I apologize for my actions.
Do you also know that both the New and Old Testaments say that the punishment for murder is death? Not all Christians believe in capital punishment, but do you think you deserve to die for murdering those innocent people?
Yeah, I do.
by the laws of man or God?
We don't get to choose what God chooses for us on our day that we stand in front of him. He gets to choose that. By the laws of man, yes, I deserved to be dead. That's the most greatest thing about faith, though, and the Bible. It's all about forgiveness and grace. And I think that's awesome. And you know why I think it's awesome?
Why?
Because I've committed so many horrific acts over and over and over throughout my life that I have to believe in something. I need it.
You need it.
I need it. Yeah. Or I would still be doing stuff like that. I tried to kill myself because I felt like I don't deserve to live anymore because of all these things I've done throughout my life.
Do you think you deserve forgiveness?
No, I don't. But that's not for me to decide. That's for Heavenly Father to decide.
Are you still the man that did those terrible things?
I am that man.
Is it still in you?
It will always be in me.
You still capable of those things?
Of course I am. But I don't choose to do those things anymore. I'm trying to choose to not to do those things.
Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, just one thing on this, which is I think you're absolutely right. It's rage is an emotion that is I guess the biggest one that he ever feels. What I worry about is why did he fail at trying to kill himself or killing himself if he has so much? I mean, he manages it with everybody else. Why not himself? Well, obviously his rage is not turned in enough on himself in order to complete. He's managed to complete the task of killing, I guess, everybody that he's had that in mind for, other than himself. There he does. He points to a scar. Well, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. I'll leave it there. Chase, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. There's genuine emotional accessing here. There's real speaking. And one of the ways I think this is real is that he's editing while he is speaking. And we talk about this. We talk about when people edit themselves. However, he's not doing this in a way to distract or improve our perception of him. And I think this is rare in these kinds of people who choose to do these prison interviews. It's very rare not to engage in this crazy perception management campaign. He's editing in a way that makes him sound a little bit worse. And in this last clip, he says he deserves to die. So he's kind of now talking about the difference between judgment of man and God, maybe. But he's saying he deserves no forgiveness and then talks about the grace of God. So let's draw a hard line here between finding religion and becoming spiritual. So religion is mostly external. So language, tribe, rituals, signals. You can adopt a religion or say that you adopt a religion overnight. Change your vocabulary, wear a different uniform, learn a script. Spirituality is internal. And I don't think we're seeing a lot of that. And I think that's what you're seeing, Scott, in my opinion. That's maybe responsibility and humility and surrender. You can't cosplay that. And I think it shows up in behavior when nobody's watching. It shows up when he's back in the cell block or wherever they're going. And if this is real, we would expect less performance and more practice, more demonstration, not bargaining with consequences, no PR around repentance, consistent truth-telling, concrete, whatever you call it. What's the word I'm looking for? Restitution, maybe, toward the victim's family, and acceptance of whatever the law demands without fishing for sympathy. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of that. And a lot of people find religion in prison. That's identity and tribe. Becoming spiritual, or that side of it, means that the ego loses the stage, the mic. So the spotlight shrinks and the story stops being about his feelings and starts being about their suffering. We're not seeing a whole lot of that, even though we did in this clip. We did. So here's the tell. If grace becomes a way to explain himself, that's kind of a religious shield. If grace becomes a way to quietly repair some harm and carry the weight, maybe that's spiritual growth. Believe whatever you want about God. Our job is behavior. And I would say that religion is not transformation. Behavioral patterns can show us transformation. And we'll see what we think here after this video. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I think he's acting. I don't believe this guy at all. When David asked him if he believes he should die by the laws of man or the laws of God, the answer is both, right? Because he says we don't get to choose what God chooses for us on our day. Well, no shit, Hoss. What that statement is has nothing to do with the question he just asked. Nothing to do with it. Then he says, and then he smiles this really weird smile and says, the Bible's all about forgiveness and grace, and he thinks that's awesome. Well, the Bible isn't all about forgiveness and grace. That's not what it's all about. You have Genesis, where you're talking about the beginning. You have Leviticus, where it talks about the meaning of life. You have Proverbs, where it talks about morals and conduct and those kind of things. So it's not, this guy hasn't read the Bible, and he's pretending like he has. That's why I'm saying he's taking the Lord's name in vain by doing this. He's pretending to be something he's not. And that's why people buy it, because they don't know enough about it either to look at that and go, wait a minute, this guy's full of it. So I think that's what's going on. I think he's acting here. To me, none of that looks real. I mean, you can laugh at it, but that's the way it is. Can I get an amen? Mark Sullivan got that. So yeah, I don't think he knows the Bible. He hasn't read the Bible. He's pretending he did, you know. So no, I'm not.
Not a requirement.
Do what?
It's not a requirement to be a Christian to read the Bible.
No, it's not. It certainly isn't. But if you're going to act like you did and pretend like you are and talk about how the Bible is a specific thing, you better have read it, or read most of it anyway, so you get an idea what's in there. And he hadn't. He doesn't know. No idea. And I bet we'll find out some stuff later on when he goes back to his cell, and the way he acts, he hadn't changed at all either. Of course, we all mess up and we say and do all that. But no, this cat's selling books, man. That's what's going on here. Because earlier I couldn't figure out, what's this guy got going on? Why is he acting this way? What is he coming across? Because since, like he said, I'm never getting out of here, but he's going to sell books. What?
We need to do a compilation of us going through videos and then discovering that there's a book.
Yes.
That's a great compilation idea. That's a great idea.
Oh yeah, man. Because I didn't know he was going to have
put one of those together.
Heaven Bound after that. That just set me off even worse.
Yeah,
I couldn't.
It's not just a book. There's a franchise.
Yeah, exactly. Then you got the TV series and all that. So anyway, yeah, I think he's full of it. I don't think he's found religion at all. Nothing. Greg, what do you got?
Yes. So I will say this. You don't chase your dead on. There are religions where you can simply say something and you are a convert, period. There's no restriction. And yes, there are places in the Bible where it says you should proceed from, every word that proceeded from the mouth of God. But there's also a very famous guy who went to heaven hanging on a cross and converted right there dying. So, it's hard to say what the right answer is about what it means to be Christian. There's one thing that's really telling. When you think of Christianity, you have a very clear in your head connotation for what it means. The word grace is a powerful word when you can't explain what it means. If you have no capability for forgiveness, if you have no capability for any kind of feelings for other people, the word grace is something very powerful. I didn't hear him say, God loves me and is willing to forgive me for my transgressions or any of that kind of thing. I heard grace. That means I'm taken into heaven based on a belief. And that's powerful, especially from a guy who has shown us that he really doesn't have the ability that we can see, at least, to show any compassion, to show any feelings of remorse, any of that other stuff. Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Even if it's for a bad reason you do good things, maybe it's good. It's better than the other. And what I see here, when I look at him, when he actually says out loud that what caused these problems, Mark, interestingly, he doesn't outsource it this time. What caused that still inside me? What caused that still here? I still got all those same things. I think he just demonstrates right here in these words what I think is going on. And that is, he's controlling rage. He's controlling all that using whatever religion it is. Scott, would you believe he's found Jesus or he's found whoever, whatever you believe, what he's doing is using something to control something. And I think it's why we see him making some at least movements toward amends in the way he speaks when he's talking, not apologizing from feeling the thing we were looking for. But I do see emotion here. I do see him thinking my time is coming. And it reminds me of talking to elderly people that I've known in my past. And I said, do you believe in God? I just want to ask a question from somebody very close to me one time. And he was old, 75, and said, at this point, do you think I have much choice? If you think that you have no chance of ever getting out of prison, and there's a promise of something on the backside of this that is not like the life that you've lived and that kind of thing, it could be enough reason to cause all the psychological pressure and the emotion and all that. But he surely wraps a nice little bow on it right here. That's all I got. Mark, have you gone?
Yeah.
Is that all this?
Yeah.
Scott, you want to ramble on for another 15 minutes?
I do. I really do, man, because I got so much. This cat hadn't read the Bible, man. I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. This is what we called in the Navy. Damn, I wish it was chaplain something, like chaplain vomit,
Yeah.
like someone just repeating what they heard from a chaplain.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff he's doing. He's heard somebody else talk about. That's the only thing we're going to hear is
Shithouse preacher. We call them shithouse preachers.
Yeah, man. Platitudes. That's all we're going to hear from this guy because he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm telling you, he doesn't know.
Do you also know that both the New and Old Testaments say that the punishment for murder is death? Not all Christians believe in capital punishment, but do you think you deserve to die for murdering those innocent people?
Yeah, I do.
By the laws of man or God?
We don't get to choose what God chooses for us on our day that we stand in front of him. He gets to choose that. By the laws of man, yes, I deserve to be dead. That's the most greatest thing about faith, though, and the Bible. It's all about forgiveness and grace. And I think that's awesome. And you know why I think it's awesome?
Why?
Because I've committed so many horrific acts over and over and over throughout my life that I have to believe in something. I need it.
You need it.
I need it. Yeah. Or I'd still be doing stuff like that. I tried to kill myself because I felt like I don't deserve to live anymore because of all these things I've done throughout my life.
Do you think you deserve forgiveness?
No, I don't. But that's not for me to decide. That's for Heavenly Father to decide.
Are you still the man that did those terrible things?
I am that man.
Is it still in you?
It will always be in me.
You still capable of those things?
Of course I am. But I don't choose to do those things anymore. I'm trying to choose to not to do those things.
All right. Well, it's been fairly exciting, this episode. Mark, what have you seen? What do you think about all this?
Yeah, look, here's my takeaway from this is that religion may have at some point caused some, but by no means most, violent criminals to stop being violent. The majority are never going to change. Or if I'm wrong, here's what I'm never going to risk for me or you or my family, the people that I love. I'm just never going to risk it. So they're not going to get out. They're going in and they're not getting out. And I could be wrong about that. Maybe they can change. Maybe God might be able to help them. Maybe Jesus might be able to help them. I'm not risking it on your behalf, on my behalf, on the people I love. They're staying inside, and I'll go to my grave maybe being wrong. Maybe some of them were saved. I'm not taking that risk for you or me or anybody. Chase, what do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening throughout the whole thing. But keep in mind, we are creatures with ancient wiring. We share pretty much the same hardware. All of us have pretty much the same hardware. The software we have as adults is really hard to change. Mark, to your point, It's very hard to change from the crap that we inherit from our own childhood development. We run more than most of us would be willing to admit on autopilot for a lot of how we navigate conflict, how we act and behave so that others think we're special, and how we seek safety and comfort. So we still see a lot of the old patterns running that are in his behavior profile. And this entire behavior profile that I put together, I'll have in my notes for you. You can download it in the thing down there. This level of rawness, I think, is what all of us hope for when we tune into a prison interview. We hope to see this kind of stuff. So a lot of our behavioral patterns revolve around our desire to feel special. And when something removes the feeling of being special or is able to shift our perspective enough that we see a way zoomed out, bigger picture, some of those old patterns die off. And I think we're seeing some hint of that, of a perspective shift, not an emotional shift, not he's a better person or anything, but we're seeing a shift in perspective that occurred somehow. But the big things to look for in these situations, Mark, to your point, is one, low empathy plus high impulsivity. And so this makes relapse pretty probable under stress. And the final is conversion fatigue. And after a while, the moral adoration starts to fade and the significance void starts coming back. And there's something else that's got to take that space. I went on long, I apologize. Greg?
So I would say a fish tastes like what it swims in. All those tattoos didn't come from the good Lord. Those tattoos represent his past and all of the getting to where he's at right now. And all of that is programming. Chase, you talk about it being on autopilot. It's conditioned response. All of those things, all that violent behavior, all that ranting and rage and all those things that he's had are just beneath the surface. And you can see it. If you pay attention, it creeps out a few times. Now, did the Almighty come and help him? Maybe. Don't know. But what we do know is that at least there's some containment of behavior. Now, the problem is if you were to let him out, Mark, back to your point, in my opinion, this guy is just thinly containing the rage. And he's thinly containing it by swimming in a pond of people who are reinforcing his beliefs right now. So if he actually says the words Heavenly Father, which is not a really common Christian usage. LDS guys use it. So maybe he's found some LDS guys who will insulate him. But whatever brotherhood he's in that insulates him and helps him contain right now, he's good. But if he were released today, where he would likely go, he's back into the pond, back into the other one. And as far as, I'm saved and all that, that's really good. I'm surprised this is Texas after all. I think he must have pleaded out, because otherwise they would have said, I'm glad you are saved by God, because here's your chance to meet him, because they execute a lot of people in Texas. What you got, Reverend?
On every eye closed and every pocketbook open as we begin to sing. Let's put our hands together. I think I think he's moving now from as a psychopath, which I think he is. I think we're seeing him move into the con game, which is going to be horrible at, because we're seeing an immature con begin to develop here because he's got something to sell. And if he lives, did he get the death penalty? Do we know?
No. I think he's life in prison. I think he didn't contest. I think he just, at least as I recall, he just pleaded guilty, and that's why he's not.
Okay. There'll be more than $2 then. You wait and see, because he's getting into that game now. And then I bet he starts preaching soon. I don't know, he may not. But I think it's a great example of seeing a psychopath come in and be able to work his way through different situations. And he's worked his way through all the way up through this. Now he's turning into a salesman. And so he's becoming, I think we're seeing one turn into a con at this point. Psychopaths make awesome cons. They're really good at it. And most cons are psychopaths, come to find out. I think it was 82% or something of the big long cons turned out to be psychopath. So I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing one morph into a con before our very eyes. So, all right, fellas. I think this is another good one, and we'll see you next time.
The Behavior Panel.
Yeah, this guy's a...